You should make your own values and never take any dogma on trust. You can only accept what you have realized and chosen. Bohdan Havrylyshyn.
How are the things? Is everything okay? I've got company here. They're shooting a film about me, about my life. Since I was 10, my most coveted dream was to become a free man. On August 24th, 1947, I boarded the big cargo ship named Liberty. I was heading for the New World that had no wrinkles of ages, but was still healing from the scars left by World War II. In Germany, in a camp for displaced persons, I was hired by a company to work in North Ontario, Canada, as a lumberjack. I dreamed to make a career in the New World, and I made plans about my future after my lumberjack contract was completed. Those dreams also brought back my past memories. The Alps remind me of something Gothic, of Gothic churches that seem to climb to the sky with their towers. When it's sunny, it's okay, but when it's not, especially in winter, they look very grim. And the Carpathians, they are soft. Like trees, like meadows. You feel like hugging them. The Carpathians have always been my favorite and most attractive part of Ukraine. Maybe because the village where I was born is near the Carpathians.
This shirt is more than 100 years old. It's my grandmother's. She sewed it from her own homespun linen. That's what makes it different from other shirts. We have a lot of shirts that people used to wear in our village of Koropets.
I was born in the village of Koropets on the river Dniester. I was the youngest of 4 children in a poor peasant family. My father had finished 6 grades of school and my mother 4. We lived in a hut built of clay and hay. But my father was an enterprising man, and when I was born in October 1926, he was already saving money for his children to go to high school.
Я думаю, що такі люди, як Богдан Гаврилишин, вони по великому рахунку і рухають.
To my mind, it is men like Bohdan Havrylyshyn that make the history of their country, their nation.
Дуже часто
I would say that their greatness, their effective activity, and their deeds often go unnoticed by their compatriots and contemporaries, by those who live in their times. But after many years, they are remembered and talked about. Time proves that such passionately dedicated personalities are the real elite of every successful nation.
During World War I, my father was in the Austrian army, and he happened to be in Czechoslovakia, Austria, and even northern Italy. He saw that people lived better there, and he explained it by the higher level of education than in our Galicia. My father knew that he had to give his children the best possible education at any cost. After 3 years in a junior school, I went to a secondary school in Buchach. It was 3 kilometers walk from my village. On Sundays, my father harnessed the horses and we went to the church in Buchach. When we came back home, Mother would cook a very tasty Sunday lunch. In summertime, we would gather in the veranda. My brother Misko, a student of the Lviv University, had his vacation. He would play his mandolin and Mother would sing in her beautiful voice. Everybody would sing along, a kind of family choir. In between the songs, Mother would read out the Bible or recite Shevchenko. She knew a great many of his poems by heart. Those were the happiest moments of my youth. To the Soviets, my father was a kulak, and so an enemy of the people. Enemies of the people were deported to Siberia. We lived in constant fear, waiting for our turn. Father and I spent nights hiding in different places. In summer we hid in a haystack, and in winter in our neighbor's barn, and they didn't know it. One night I heard heart-rending cries, and I understood that they were taking the neighbors away. I grit my mouth, forcing myself to keep silent. That night cut deep into my memory as one of the most painful moments of my life.
To me as a historian, this job is difficult, because I normally look backwards, and Bohdan Havrylyshyn always looks forward. His mind is always 10, 20, or even 100 years ahead.
In September 1941, the German occupation authorities allowed only 10 schools to open in the entire Galicia and Volyn regions. I was admitted to one of them. It was in Chortkiv, near Ternopil. Father Derda, a Basilican who taught religion there, was the only teacher with whom I could communicate, in and out of class. He was the only professor that I debated with. It was from him that I first heard about Aristotle, Socrates, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the man who talked about the social contract. Father Derda helped me to become a free man. I mean, to make my own judgments about good things and bad things. He helped me to develop my intellectual infrastructure. I've had a lot of teachers in my education background. Most of them were mediocre. Some were great, but Father Derda made the greatest influence on me. As the German occupation was getting more and more brutal, the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, UPA, took up resistance. In July 1944, when the remainders of the SS Volunteer Division Galician were on their way from Brody, after a crushing defeat, the train was stopping in Slavske. My friend and I got into the train and passed through the cars whispering, "If you want to join the UPA, get out of this train. We'll take you to the insurgents." For that, we were arrested and taken to Germany for forced labor. Then, there was only back-breaking toil, strict discipline, and bad food, until May 1945.
To me, talking about Bohdan Havrylyshyn is like reading a real novel about a man's life.
After World War II, almost 2 million Ukrainians found themselves in Germany. The Americans allowed about 250,000 of them, mostly those from Western Ukraine, to stay and then emigrate across the ocean. I was in several camps and luckily met my father in one of them. My post-war wanderings and risky travels actually resembled an adventure movie. I spent several months in the Ellwangen camp, where I formulated some basic principles for myself. Many of them came from my brother Misko and my father. They were trust in human goodness, confidence in my own abilities, awareness of the need to constantly learn and tell the truth. A man doesn't need too many guiding principles to manage his own life.
He's an outgoing man, and little by little, he warmed to the topic. On the very first day, I learned a lot of interesting things about him. He told me how he had learned English in Canada and how he had learned other languages. That was very interesting.
We worked 8 or 9 hours a day with an axe and a saw. I knew a few English words and had a German-English dictionary. I also offered my fellow lumberjacks lessons of English every evening after supper. I charged them 10 cents per lesson, and so doubled my daily wage. On the first day, I got up earlier than others and learned 40 English words for things around me. Bed, table, stove, some verbs like go, wash, and others. From the very first day, I thought in English, not my native language. Every morning I learned 40 new words and asked one of the local lumberjacks how they pronounced those words.
He knew he had to learn. He's the kind of person that always learns. He learned when he was 6, and he is still learning. He's a knowledge-thirsty man with that special drive for discovering the world.
One day I was admitted to the aviation department of the university. The Globe and Mail, the newspaper with huge circulation, published a photograph of me and my younger friend Vasil, with the headline, "Immigrant Lumberjack Admitted to Toronto University." When I entered the university, I was working as a barman in New Strathcona House. The visitors told me touchingly, "Great job, Bob. You're going to do something interesting in your life. Do it for us, Sonny." Working as a barman, I understood a few important things. One of them was, any job can be interesting and useful if it helps you understand something new. Secondly, every person has some humaneness.
His trust in people is incredible. Bohdan Dmitrovich never hesitates to confide this responsibility to a person that he may not even know, but he believes in the goodness that is in every human being. And when you feel you are trusted, you try very hard not to lose this trust.
Come on in, Bohdan Dmitrovich. Oh, what a strong hand you have. Bohdan Dmitrovich gave me a great opportunity through Cartier. You see, a young fellow comes from Ukraine and exhibits his works at the head office in Geneva. It was all thanks to Bohdan Dmitrovich. I traveled to France and made acquaintance with influential people thanks to Bohdan Dmitrovich. But you know, there's one thing that I remember best of all. When we visited Bohdan Dmitrovich in his chalet in the mountains, Leonida Petrivna cooked Swiss bacon personally for me. That bacon was so tasty that after so many years, the memory of it always waters my mouth. What I mean is they were human above all.
He only sees the good side in all people. He doesn't believe in anything bad. He doesn't believe that someone may do him harm. He helps people believe in themselves and reveal what is good in them.
My father did everything for us to always learn and keep our eyes open. He told us, open your eyes to the world and learn to do everything. You've got to see and learn how things are done. We were free to do whatever we liked. When we were younger, my sisters Tusia and Tina and me became Marxists, just to follow the fashion of those times. And our father didn't object. On the contrary, he told us, you want to be Marxists? Okay, then read Karl Marx, Volume 1 and 2 and 3. If you don't, then don't talk about the things you don't know. First learn, and then do what you want.
I joined the Plast in the summer of 1937, and it was my lifetime choice. My brother Misko brought me to my first Plast camp. He was a student of the Lviv University, and when he came on vacation that summer, he brought me a Plast uniform and outfit. He persuaded Mom to let me go alone on a long journey to wonderful adventures.
Bohdan Havrylyshyn has one trait that I would emphasize. He's a scout. I'm a scout too, and we were together in the international scout movement. His scouting mind has always taken him to the top. It has always driven him to share his own values with others.
Во ім'я Отця і Сина і Святого Духа. Амінь. До вас моє слово, дорогі браття і сестри.
Metropolitan Andriy Sheptytsky personally patronized the Plast. I had the honor to receive his blessing together with a group of Plast scouts. He said a few words to each of us, looking deep into our eyes. He seemed to see my soul. I happened to meet a lot of prominent people later, but very few compared to that real giant of spirit and faith.
Балабаник, добре, мішаєш, окей.
Гей, пластуни, гей, юнаки, ми діти сонця і весни, ми діти матері природи, не зломимо своїх присяг, веде нас гордо вольністям до щастя, слави і свободи, до щастя, слави і свободи.
It was in my first Plast camp where I learned discipline and teamwork. Evenings we sat around a campfire watching the flames and listening so enthusiastically to stories about periods of Ukraine's glory and humiliation, about the age-long strife for independence, and about the commitment to this nation. The older scouts, those Canadians, had a 3-day camp with various contests. There were 5 of us, Ukrainian Plast scouts. And, you know, we proved to be better and more interesting as scouts. We staged those mute acts. What do you call them? Pantomimes. We had the guitar and we sang very well. And then there were contests. In one of them we had to cut a log with an axe. Well, I had only just come out of the woods. I was professional in that job.
I first saw him when I was in a Plast camp and he was a scout master. We all stood and he walked along the file, checking if everyone had the kerchiefs and caps. When he approached me, I saw big holes in his white socks. I felt such a pity for him. Poor guy. He's got no socks. My heart started beating fast. I don't know what happened to me, but I fell for him there and then. My mom and dad are different types in terms of temper and all that. But they kind of respect this difference. They love each other for their common and different traits.
Dad was a bit more serious and Mom gave us a bit more freedom. But when Mom started getting at us for not brushing our teeth or doing something wrong, Dad sided with us. They complemented each other and made a perfect couple. So they do now, and I think they always will. I can't imagine my father living with another woman before or after Mom, or having an affair. Lenny and Bohdan are like one molecule.
Dad is certainly very intelligent and intellectual. Mom is intuitive and sensitive. She understands things, and together they are a bomb.
On December the 25th, 1949, Lenny and I got engaged and our parents blessed us. On June the 10th, 1950, we got married. We still celebrate these two dates every month.
Мені відкрив любов, мене ягідко звав, мене ягідко звав. Солодкий чай любеньких слів, ти в серце влив моє. Він перший раз сказав мені, люба.
After I graduated from the university in Toronto, I started looking for a job. I visited companies in the United States. It was so fascinating to discover America. The United States impressed me with its powerful industry and economic dynamism. The Americans seemed to be friendlier and more straightforward than Europeans, but I didn't like their system of values and their excessive materialism. And I didn't want to be a corporate man. I wanted to remain a free man.
Я почав мріяти, скажімо, відкрити світ.
I began to dream of discovering the world when I was reading Karl May in Polish. He wrote about faraway lands, although he never left his town in Germany. But I learnt about it later. That's when I started dreaming to discover the world. Not this world of my own. I once wanted to study psychology. This world is complex, but small. But the big wide world. I taught top industrial managers. Don't start with a business plan. Start with a dream, a big daring dream. Then you can work it into a business plan.
перетрансформувати вже навіть на бізнес-план.
My trips to Africa gave me a few good lessons. Africa fascinated me. I understood one thing. You can foresee a country's future if you hear what kind of future student activists want for their country. I understood why students in French colonies struggled for independence of their countries. And when I returned to Canada, I gave a series of lectures on that subject. I said that the next generation would see African colonies gain independence. I was wrong. It happened 10 years later.
Чому він думає про інших людей? Я думаю, що це ми мало таких.
Why does he care about others? I know a lot of people personally, but I know very few who care about others more than about themselves. He owes it, above all, to his foreign experience. As I said, he has traveled a lot, learning different people, different systems, and different approaches to problems. Bohdan Dmitrovich has a Ukrainian heart, but his international experience helps him address problems comprehensively.
Having lived in northern Quebec for 3 years and worked for one of the world's biggest aluminium companies, I was selected for a one-year course at a school of management in Geneva. For 3 long years, I had longed to get to that very center. During the course, we visited companies in 10 European countries. We saw those countries through the prism of labor management relations. We learned to understand the mentalities of different nations. We got to know their cultures, work styles, and ways of recreation. Spain, France, Great Britain. In a word, we got to know Europe in its entire diversity. Of course, I dreamed to get back to Geneva, and one day my dream came true. I was invited to teach there. And in 1968, I became director of the International Management Institute in Geneva.
I think it is the essence of this Ukrainian man, whose soul is divided between the East and the West. When he achieves something, it is always something wonderful.
Listening is more important than talking. You always say what you already know, but listening gives you a chance to hear something new. However, when talking, you have an opportunity to check your ideas, express yourself, or sometimes even urge others for changes for the better. What kind of world would you like to see in the future? In late 1969, we were preparing for the Institute's 25th anniversary. One of the teachers, whose name was Klaus Schwab, suggested organizing a training event in the well-known ski resort of Davos, eastern Switzerland. The symposium took place there in January 1971. 500 people paid for their participation. I opened the conference and conducted the training sessions. A few years later, the event got the name World Economic Forum. And now it is a major global non-governmental event for businessmen, top managers, and key political leaders.
We meet at the International Political Forum as its members. His speeches are always opportune, always precise, sometimes poignant, because an intellectual ought to be restless. My sisters and I began to see the world and meet different people at a very early age. They were from different countries and different religions. They were entirely different, and we just got used. We didn't have to work too hard to learn the second language and then the third. It was all just natural with us. It was normal.
In the 1970s, I was in great demand as a lecturer, advisor, and consultant. During that decade, I became a member of 3 international organizations: the International Academy of Management, the World Academy of Art and Science, and the Club of Rome. In two different periods, I was a member of the club's executive committee. In 1980, I wrote a report for the Club of Rome, entitled Towards More Effective Societies, Roadmaps to the Future. It was published later as a separate book in 9 languages.
Goat cheese, sheep cheese, local. After, là, ici, local cheese, et ici, local cheese. Ça, col de la croix. Aussi.
Ouais, ça va.
I found Switzerland an ideal country for me and my family. For my job, Geneva suited best of all. It is a multilingual country where 4 languages are used, 3 official languages and 1 regional. Geneva is home to the UN headquarters, a lot of international non-governmental organizations, and headquarters of many international corporations.
We always had dinner together. It was a privilege. We lived in Geneva, and he always came from his office for dinner. I remember it very well. There were always 5 of us at the table, and we talked about our day in school. And he always told us about his work and the students he taught. We always had some conversation. We didn't just sit around eating.
We bought a villa in Vernier, a suburb of Geneva, on a small private street named Reposoir. At that time, I was traveling a lot across the world, so it was important to have a place where I could concentrate for a while. Our family was involved in community activities. As the director of the institute, I was well known in Vernier and was elected to the street executive committee. Switzerland, with its direct democracy and unique political system, has united people of different languages, religions and cultures, and is doing quite well economically. But it took Switzerland 700 years to become like this.
I remember when I was 13, I said to him, "I know your work is more important than us." He got so nervous and said, "What are you talking about? It can't be." I say, "Well, you are always on the road." I was 13 then, and I needed my dad around, and his job kept him everywhere else but his home. He taught us so much. Now, when I'm a little older, I understand it, but when I was 13, I didn't. Now I understand how hard it was for him at that moment to hear me say that, because his family was above all to him.
By the end of the 1970s, I had been to 70 countries on different continents. In each country where I was, I did something useful. In some countries I left a trace by making a serious influence on their development, particularly in Australia and Argentina. I lectured in Brazil. I was lucky to get to know and understand Japan, an entirely different civilization with its traditions and philosophical heritage. I visited Iran at the invitation of the Sheikh as one of the world's 100 intellectuals. I traveled to India almost as often as the United States, France or Sweden. IMI India is still head and shoulders above many other business schools.
It was in 1972 or 73. We were on vacation in Romania, again on Mamaia Beach. It was just out in left field. All my friends in Geneva went to Saint-Tropez, Saint-Maxime or Italy. And we went to Romania. Where? Romania? That was really out of line. One day, as we were sitting on the beach, Dad came up running and said, "You know what? There's a 24-hour tour to Kyiv. Let's go." When we were finally on our way to Ukraine, there was a problem with one Italian passenger on the plane. She complained of a headache. As a result, they kept us under quarantine for 8 hours at the Boryspil airport. They were afraid we might have brought some virus from Mamaia beach. Then Dad contacted some officials. They came, and we as foreign guests were allowed to take a 4-hour bus ride. But we had to stay inside the bus. So we had 4 hours in Kyiv. I remember the Poton Bridge. That iron woman with a sword was not there yet. I remember Krishchatek Street and a kvass cistern in front of the Hotel Dnipro. I traveled to Ukraine again in 1989. We went together to the village, and there I saw for the first time how much my father had left behind in Ukraine. By his emotions, I saw that his soul was there.
Mother didn't go with the family because she was waiting for my brother Slavko, who was arrested in Lviv. She didn't know that he had already been murdered. When the Soviet army entered Buchach, Mother went to our home village Koropets and hid in a dugout behind our old hut. Risking to be arrested, relatives brought her food and water. She died in 1956. She never saw Slavko and knew nothing about the rest of the family, because our letters would have exposed her to danger.
Святий Боже, святий кріпкий, святий безсмертний, помилуй нас.
Glory to Jesus Christ. Thank you very much, Father. I was the little finger, the youngest child in the family. Mom loved me and gave me all her love. I had to go through some horrible things. Many times my life hung by a thread. But I never feared. I knew that Mama was thinking and caring about me.
Oh, Mama was very kind. She could have lived years longer, but she got message that Bohdan's brother, Slavko, had been tortured to death in jail in Chortkiv. And when she got it into her head, she was broken. I took her to my house when she got paralyzed. I nursed her for 2 years because her hands and legs didn't move. A week after we buried her, we got mail from Bohdan Dmitrovich. He sent his mom a little parcel, but she was no more.
I love my native Koropets, even though I left it when I was 4. Looking from the hills of the Dniester, you see how it winds, as if caressing one bank and pushing the other aside. An unspeakably beautiful landscape. I am proud of my village. For its national self-awareness and patriotism, many of its people fought in the UPA. Since I came back to Ukraine, I have been visiting Koropets every year to pray at my mother's grave and see my relatives who survived Siberia and 2 nephews.
When he came the first time, he got off the car and ran all the way down the street to that hut. He wanted to see if that hut was still there.
One of the happiest moments in our married life was when we went to my native village Koropets in 1971. The car brought us to the culture house, the largest building in the village. Leonida Petrivna got off the car, took a deep breath and said, "I belong here." And she was born in Edmonton. Until she was 10, she thought that milk came from the milkman. She didn't know what a cow was. And here in this village, she says, "I belong here." And since then, it's very important to me. Koropets has been her home, not Edmonton.
The smell of Koropets. I felt it with all my heart. I got off the car and said, "I belong here, here."
It's the smell of steppe wormwood. Being sure that the Soviet Union would break up, I decided to return to Ukraine as soon as possible. I had to wait for 2 years.
I'd like to point out one important thing about Bohdan. Apart from his professional experience, we remember that he started out as a lumberjack and rose to university professorship and then became rector of the IMI. Bohdan is above all a man who really cares about society's development and especially feels for his dearest land, Ukraine.
When the reality of life and the political situation made for him possible to close more his tie with his country, he did not hesitate 1 second and went back.
In December 1988, I met with Boris Paton, president of the National Academy of Sciences, and we decided to found the International Management Institute in Kiev, IMI Kiev, as a Swiss-Ukrainian joint venture. On the 7th of August 1989, it was officially registered. That was sensational news. Even the Izvestia wrote, "If you wish to learn something about business management, you should go to Kiev."
In 1989, Bohdan Dmitrovich said, "I feel it's enough for studying and analyzing. We need to start working. And we will begin with generating the elite. I want to begin with what I can do very well, to found the International Management Institute in Kiev."
He asked me to join him in the business school he has done there. And there again, you see in this business school the willingness, the idea of Bohdan to make knowledge and experience available to people which maybe not had the chance and the opportunity to travel abroad or to get this.
In 2009, we celebrated the 20th anniversary of IMI Kiev. Its graduates said, "We didn't only learn various aspects, methods and technologies of management. Most importantly, the years of studies at IMI changed our lives and expanded our views of business and management." We feel we must find ways to influence the government, its policy, its role in the economy and its relations with business.
For the first 10 years or so, IMI-Kyiv was founded by people who had nothing in common with Ukraine but their respect for Dr. Havrylyshyn. He persuaded them when it was rather difficult to persuade anyone to do anything for this country that was obscure to many. All they knew about Ukraine was Chernobyl or something negative like that. But the fire in his eyes ignited the foreigners who had no relation at all to Ukraine. And they passed that fire on to others, and it was very important for Ukraine.
I came for a visit, and at that point I was not a board member of the school yet. And he announced, he made a big speech, and he welcomed me. And then at the end of the speech, he welcomed me to the board of IMI-Kyiv. So he announced my membership before talking to me, which I think was very...
In November 1989, at a conference of the Club of Rome, I met with George Soros. We agreed to set up a separate branch of his Revival, Renaissance Foundation in Ukraine. It was clear to me that very soon Ukraine would be independent, and I did everything I could to make it happen sooner. I invited leading politicians to present the political systems of their countries to Ukrainian members of parliament and share their unique personal experience. I chaired the advisory council at the Ukrainian parliament and tried to give personal advice to Ukraine's top leadership. I was an advisor to the first president of Ukraine, to 4 speakers of the Verkhovna Rada, and to 3 prime ministers.
I remember my visit to the parliament in Kyiv together with him. He showed me where he had taken part in drafting the constitution in the hard period of the first independent years. He showed me where essential legislative acts had been written. He showed me where political leaders had made crucial decisions. I was moved very deeply.
Bohdan
Havrylyshyn knew very well that changes were coming soon. He felt that Ukraine had to become a full-fledged member of the international community, and that the old-timers elite would hardly achieve it. That's why he looked to the new generation. He looked to the people who were growing later, with the awareness of Ukraine as a big European nation.
I believe that my last 20 years, except for 8 months of illness, have been the best period of my life. Before that, I had to make money and support my family, though I have an allergy to money. I hate money, but it's a necessary instrument. Now, I have a wish to do something and give something without having to expect any revenue. It's fantastic to have financial resources. Okay, it was nice talking to you. It was a real pleasure.
Let me quote Aristotle. Money doesn't make us happier, but it calms the nerves.
That's right. It's a necessary instrument. The Orange Revolution was a unique historic event, not only in Ukraine, but also the rest of the world. It was exceptionally peaceful. Not a single person suffered. The people chanted their only demands: justice and freedom. It was when the Ukrainian nation revealed its true character. The revolution was in the focus of international attention. There were great business and investment opportunities. It seemed then that billions of dollars were just waiting for a law that would give clear guarantees of property rights and free trade in Ukraine. But that didn't happen, and the billions went elsewhere.
Now, talking about his foundation, we mean raising a new generation elite in Ukraine. He understands that it is a long-term project, but it is vital for Ukraine to raise a new generation of business people, politicians, writers and artists willing to change this country. They will work, they will make their careers, and they will make money. But, above all, they should care about the state they live in.
In December 2009, the Bohdan Havrylyshyn Charitable Foundation was founded in Kiev to help the real elite emerge and gather the critical mass in 8 to 10 years. I hope these young people will occupy key positions in the political and other institutions and will drive this country through transformations to what I call a normal country. There are 4 characteristics of a country that everybody would like. Firstly, real political freedom. I won't specify that. Secondly, economic welfare. Let there be rich people, but there must be no poverty and no reasons for it. Thirdly, social justice. I say again, it's not bad for a country to have very rich people, but there mustn't be poor people. And finally, in this country, we must live together with nature, not just use and destroy it. The Foundation's mission is to help the new generation to learn the skills of teamwork, leadership and mobility, to help accumulate critical masses of politically and socially active people in Ukraine. Is this a dream? Yes, it is. Or is it already a visible reality? I think it is.
He has shown that there is no end to this work. He hasn't completed his mission yet. There's still a lot to be done, and as long as he's physically able, he must keep working.